Your husband got my wife pregnant. Pay compensation. On the day of a major life event, our wedding, an outrageous statement came out of my brother Derek's mouth. It was just a mistake. Please pay the compensation, said my sister-in-law, Nicole, breaking down in tears. We were all stunned by the sudden turn of events, but then I couldn't help but start laughing. My name is Jessica. I'm a 32-year-old office worker. Up until I was 29, my life was all about work. Not that I was completely devoted, but I just didn't have any romantic opportunities. However, 3 years have passed since I started dating Andy, whom I met through a friend's introduction. I had never thought about marriage, but when he suddenly said, "Let's get married," I found myself nodding immediately. Truly, you never know what life will bring. Thinking about marriage, the first thing was to tell our parents. When we first went to Andy's parents' house, both of his parents seemed so kind, and I thought we'd get along well. The meeting with my future in-laws went without a hitch. Then it was time to tell my family, which is where my worry began. My father, Patrick, is an ordinary salaried worker, and my mother, Mary, a typical housewife. They're just an average couple, nothing particularly difficult about them. But the problem isn't my ordinary parents. The problem is my not-so-ordinary brother, Derek. Derek, who's 3 years older than me and now 35, married 5 years ago. He and his wife, my sister-in-law Nicole, who's the same age as him, don't have any children. It's their issue as a couple, and I don't really think much of it. My parents never pressure them about grandchildren, saying that life is a gift. However, Nicole's family seems to be pushy about it. Jessica, since you're not married, you wouldn't understand this kind of trouble. You're lucky, she often says to me. I just thought it was tough for her, but when I mentioned it to a friend, she was surprised and said, "Isn't that a sarcastic remark about you not being married?" I laughed it off. What, really? Is that sarcasm? That's overthinking it. I don't plan to become such a negative person. Saying my relationship with Nicole is neither particularly close nor bad, just a bit awkward, but with my actual brother Derek, it's different. He's always been troublesome. To put it simply, he's not satisfied unless he's above me. Since we were kids, you're really bad at studying. You're a girl with no popularity among boys. You're not even loved by our parents. He's always said things like that. On the other hand, I got 100 points today. I got another gift from a girl. Our parents love me more, Derek would brag. But I know the truth. The tests he shows off with good grades are either easy tests done after failing the real ones or lower grade review tests. He never shows his actual grades that matter. Those go straight to the trash. As for the gifts, he begs for my birthday present. Anything will do, even something cheap, and comes home with little chocolates or candies. Just really small things. As for our parents' love, that's just non-existent from my perspective. Our parents have always been fair to both of us. In a way, I feel sorry for Derek, so I've never been bitter towards him, just watched him with a cold eye and maintained a proper distance. Derek, too, started working, but his company has some issues with the work environment. There's hardly any salary increase, and the bonuses are like pocket money, sometimes not even paid out. His salary is too low for living alone, so he's still at our parents' house. In contrast, the company I joined is not a major corporation, but it's fairly large. There are annual promotions, and bonuses are decent. This seemed to have hurt Derek's pride, and his sarcasm escalated. No matter how much you dress up, you just look worse. And threw away all my makeup. Must be nice to have a big salary. Give me some pocket money. And took money from my wallet right in front of me. That time, it escalated into a big fight that was unbearable, and I soon moved out to live on my own. It's been 10 years since I last went home, except for Christmas. Home had become even more bothersome in the last 5 years since Nicole was there. Despite it being an unavoidable family meeting, the thought of going to my parents' house was too distressing. I've said it many times, but my brother and his wife are really difficult. I kept reminding my fiancé, Andy. Don't worry. Your brother might be a piece of work, but your parents are decent, right? I just need to thank them for letting me meet you, Jessica, and greet them. It won't be weird. He said this with his usual carefree smile. I'm still worried. Finally, we arrived at my family home. Oh my, you finally come! Mom greeted us cheerfully. You've done well to come, Dad repeated, his smile a bit strained. Maybe that's just how fathers feel when their 30-some daughters are finally getting married. It's a happy occasion, but still, it's a complex feeling. I introduced my fiancé, Andy. We talked about the wedding and the future, and time passed pleasantly with trivial chit-chat. But then, the moment arrived. So, the sister who hardly ever comes home has returned, Derek said as he walked in, a perfect first dose of sarcasm. Derek, what about work? Andy and I had taken paid leave to come here, but it was a weekday. Derek was supposed to be at work. In fact, that's why we had chosen this day to visit. Derek and Nicole were living with my parents not because they wanted to, but because they had no money. To avoid them, we planned our visit like this. Yet, here he was, home in the middle of the day. When I asked him, looking puzzled, Derek smirked and said in a snarky tone, "How could I miss the meeting of my dear sister's fiancé?" That's what I said. I wanted to say that we didn't need him there, but I held back, and an awkward silence fell. Sensing the tension, "Nice to meet you, Derek," Andy cheerfully greeted. He was so refreshing, almost too refreshing. It's like a halo was shining behind him with a forest backdrop, a moment of healing in my mind. I heaped endless praise on my fiancé. Derek's face, on the other hand, was slightly contorted. He was obviously not used to dealing with someone as strong-willed. Throughout, Derek seemed overwhelmed by Andy's constant smiling. "Then I'm back," a voice echoed, followed by the sound of someone returning. "Hi, is Jessica here?" Nicole, my sister-in-law, showed her face. Derek's salary alone wasn't enough for them to live on, so of course she also worked. Which begs the question, why wasn't she at work? Stunned by the sudden arrival of Derek and Nicole, my parents and I watched as Derek boldly sat down next to me. Why? And then Nicole, for some reason, sat next to Andy. Why, what's with that face? Derek, the complete opposite of my refreshing fiancé, wore a dark, ugly, sarcastic smile. When I asked what that smile meant, "Well, I'm just surprised someone would marry someone like you," the second wave of sarcasm hit. "What? Hey, what's your name?" Derek rudely asked my fiancé. When Andy responded, "So, Andy, if you want to call off the marriage, now's your chance." What is he starting now? "Hey, Derek, as you can see, she's not much to look at, but marrying her would be an even bigger mistake. She's truly hopeless and an awful person." "Hey!" I tried to stop him, but Derek wouldn't quit. "Call off the marriage before you regret it," he declared. As I was grinding my teeth, trying to come up with a response, "Don't worry, Jessica is a wonderful woman. I'm the one who needs to try harder not to be dumped by her," my fiancé said, with a refreshingly sincere smile. Oh, what a relief. My anger towards Derek was instantly dissipated by that refreshing breeze. At that moment, Nicole, who had been watching, said, "Andy, was it? You're kind. Where do you work?" My company is corporation," Andy responded. "Ah, a decent company, huh? So you must be earning a good salary." "Well, I guess it's average." They started chatting. Derek is one thing, but Nicole is something else. Asking such things of someone you've just met. "Hey, Nicole." "What, Jessica?" "It's important for marriage, isn't it? I'm just making sure your precious daughter doesn't end up with the wrong man, so Patrick and the rest don't have to worry." "That's none of your business. This should have been settled when we first talked about marriage. I must have already told my parents about what kind of man he is before bringing him home, but I couldn't say that in front of Andy, so I just grimaced. While this was happening, Nicole started draping herself over Andy's arm. "Hey, Nicole." "What?" "I'm just trying to get along with my brother-in-law, so be quiet." No, that's going too far, right, Derek?" I thought surely even Derek would see this as too much, but there he was, drinking beer in the middle of the day. "What are you doing?" "What? I'm just toasting to my poor sister's miserable marriage." Toasting to something miserable? Everything was chaos. My parents were confused and couldn't handle the assertive Derek and Nicole. DK was drunk, and Nicole was making advances on Andy. As Andy tried to push her away, she clung on more tightly. I tried to pull her off. "What is this madness? I'm so sorry about my family." "No, it's okay. It's more than I was told. You've had it tough, Jessica." As we were leaving, Andy said that to me and affectionately patted my head. Such a refreshing breeze despite the troubles at the family meeting. Once it was over, there was no need to see Derek and Nicole again, and things went smoothly. Then, finally, on the day of the wedding. Oh, I'm so nervous. I was the one looking tense in the bridal room. Are you okay, Jessica? Mom, seeing my poor complexion and serious face, had called Andy over, and he was comforting me. He really is too good of a husband for me. Just as I was starting to feel better and ready to go on, here I am. Derek had arrived. With a loud noise, the door opened and a storm entered. I had a bad feeling, and Derek's entrance was even more unsettling than I had imagined. Derek, be mindful of the time and place, Mom warned. Shut up, Mom. I have something to say to that guy. He was almost picking a fight. That guy? When Derek pointed, it was Andy, my soon-to-be husband. Me? Andy looked confused. Turning to me, Derek said, The man you're marrying today, your husband, got my wife pregnant. What? I couldn't help but scream at the sudden bombshell. The pregnancy was confirmed at the gynecologist. It happened at a time I don't recall. In other words, my wife Nicole has been unfaithful. Cheating aside, how could it possibly be Andy? Nicole said. So what? I was completely flustered by the situation, confused. I looked back and forth between Nicole and my husband. No, I have absolutely no memory of that. My husband hurriedly denied it, but at that moment, Nicole, who had been shrinking behind Derek, suddenly crumbled to the floor and started crying. I'm sorry, Andy. I told the truth about our relationship. What? Andy was the one who exclaimed in surprise. I'm sorry, Derek. It was just a moment of weakness. Now Nicole was apologizing to Derek and started crying out, How dare you damage our marriage? Pay compensation. Derek then lunged at Andy. Dad and other relatives desperately held him back. For a while, the room echoed with Derek's heavy breathing and Nicole's crying. Not understanding the situation, Andy and I looked at each other. A moment of silence followed. I was the first one to start laughing, and Andy couldn't hold back either. Once we started, we couldn't stop. Tears streamed down my face, ruining my makeup as I laughed, and everyone around us just stared in disbelief. What the heck? Why are you laughing? Derek was getting irritated. Because you know, right, Andy? Yeah, Jessica. We looked at each other with tears in our eyes and burst out laughing again. How can you laugh in this situation? Just pay the compensation. Nicole was the one who yelled at us, angry and asking for money on top of that. It was just too absurd, making me double over with laughter. What a laugh. You know, a child between me and Andy is just impossible. What? I gently wiped my tears with a tissue and said. As Nicole tilted her head, I smiled. It's impossible for us to have a child, and repeated, What do you mean? What are you talking about? Nicole was completely confused. The skin of the monster has completely peeled off. I looked at Andy to see if it was okay to tell, and he nodded slightly. So I looked back at Derek and Nicole. See, Andy has a fertility issue. There's a 0% chance of natural conception. What? Derek exclaimed in surprise. It's confirmed by medical tests. We can even bring the diagnosis if you like. But that's a lie. I am pregnant, Nicole said, now looking panicked. So if the pregnancy is real, the father isn't Andy. If we were to have a child, we'd need injections, medication, and in vitro fertilization. It would require treatment. What? Nicole's face turned even paler. Then she looked at Derek, who was staring at her with an incredulous expression. Hey, Nicole, what the hell is this? You said you cheated on me with Andy, right? Yes, I did. Andy contacted me, and I couldn't refuse because of his intimidating aura. But it was just a moment of weakness. I only love you, Derek. Only you. But they're saying Andy can't have children. Who did you really cheat with? It's a lie Andy made up. No way, that's impossible. I was just astonished at Nicole's implausible story. From the day of the family meeting when Nicole first met Andy until today, we've been almost constantly together, busy with wedding preparations and planning our life together. Do you think there was time for an affair? That's when Derek said, "You said you were meeting Andy frequently during the day and weekends having an affair, right?" "Yes, that's right. Jessica, don't lie." No, Nicole, that lie is just too much." She was desperate to pin the affair on Andy. Well, let's all just calm down for a moment. Unexpectedly, it was Dad who spoke up. His normal tone was almost disarming, but then Dad made a not-so-normal statement. "Since both of you are cheating on each other, let's just call it even." I wondered if calling it even was really appropriate in this situation. I couldn't grasp Dad's words right away and blurted out a dumbfounded response. "Derek too? Huh? And Nicole as well? Huh?" All three of us were in sync. "Wait, Dee, what are you saying? Jessica might not know, but living together, Mary and I have seen it all." "Huh? What?" I was confused and struggling to understand, but Dad just gave me his usual normal smile. "Hey, old man, stop talking nonsense." "What nonsense? It's the truth, isn't it?" Dad calmly responded to the panicking Derek. At this point, normal was scary. "Patrick, what do you mean?" Nicole asked, and Mom, smiling normally, replied, "So you see, Derek has been seeing another woman. He often skips work to meet her, even arranging rendezvous in front of our house. We couldn't help but notice." "What?" Nicole couldn't help but exclaim. "Nicole, meeting men at the nearby station isn't wise. We've had numerous sightings from neighbors." "What?" This time it was Derek who shouted. According to our parents, both Derek and Nicole were often seen in the neighborhood meeting with unknown members of the opposite sex, linking arms and heading off together. Not only our parents, but also the neighbors had witnessed it, and rumors had reached their ears. So both Nicole and Derek were cheating. What a mess. "Hey, Nicole, what the hell are you cheating for?" "Oh, you're the one to talk. You're cheating too." "I didn't get the other woman pregnant." "Well, I didn't plan to get pregnant either." "What are you, shameless?" "That's it. We're getting a divorce. Pay me compensation." "What did you say?" "I'll be the one leaving you. You pay compensation." Wow, this was a real mess. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Dad snapped his fingers. Suddenly, uncles and adult cousins came in, grabbed Derek and Nicole, and pulled them out of the room. Throughout, Derek and Nicole were accusing each other. "It's your fault." "No, it's your fault." What an unsightly exit. After they left, their voices faded away and finally disappeared. I later heard that our uncles had firmly lectured them and sent them away. The room fell silent. "I'm so sorry." Reflecting on the chaos, I deeply apologized to Andy, my soon-to-be husband. "Aren't you regretting marrying into a family like mine?" That was my biggest worry. I was prepared for the possibility that the wedding might be called off, but then I was enveloped in a gentle warmth. Andy embraced me. "I'm okay. I love you no matter what happens, and I will protect you for the rest of my life." The moment he said that, tears just started flowing from my eyes. Afterward, redoing my makeup was a hassle, but the professionals fixed it beautifully. Then, as the happiest bride in the world, I had a joyous wedding. As for what happened to Derek and Nicole, they obviously got divorced. They just kept hurling insults at each other, never having a proper conversation, and it even went to court. It was a real mess. They were both cheating, yet blamed each other so vehemently. Eventually, their parents intervened with lawyers, and somehow they settled it. In the end, it was a draw, with no compensation paid by either party. Nicole's baby turned out not to be Derek's, so there was no child support. The father of Nicole's baby was apparently her married boss, and that situation also became a big mess. Eventually, Nicole, abandoned by her affair partner, was dragged back to her parents' home. She was crying and making a scene, and my parents just sighed over it. As for Derek, his affair partner was also married, and her husband found out. Of course, she dumped Derek, and then I saw my normally calm parents get really angry for the first time. "Jessica has been troubled enough by you not working properly and fooling around with your affair partner. We don't know such a son. Get out now." They nearly kicked Derek out. It's true, when normal people get angry, it's really scary. I don't know what happened to Derek after that. Apparently, he was frequently skipping work for his affairs and got fired, so I wonder how he'll live now, but honestly, I don't care. Regardless of everything else, I'll never forgive him for insulting Andy on our wedding day. It's one thing to mess with me, but it's completely unacceptable to harm Andy. That's how madly in love I am with Andy. Andy continues to bring a refreshing breeze into my life. A new happiness is coming to our happy home. I'm looking forward to meeting them. That's what Andy says as he gently touches my stomach. A life is growing inside. The fertility treatment was tough, but I happily became pregnant. There will be more challenges ahead, but I'm sure it'll be okay. With the kind and wonderful Andy and our beloved child, I feel that we'll build a happy, ordinary family.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.